All right. Thank you for everyone for coming out this morning. We're at Digital Hollywood, and we're talking about internet, OTT, media, and the Hollywood connection. Again, thanks for coming out through this traffic. It took me 2 hours to get here from Hollywood, so I apologize. But I really want to thank the amazing panel that we have that came up here on time before I did, actually, and they showed up. So we're really fortunate to have a great cross-section of everything we just talked about in the headline. I'm going to introduce them quickly, and then we'll go into a quick, basically, state of the market where we are today. We'll have these PowerPoints that you can't see intentionally, and if you need them, we'll send them out later on. But first, I want to thank Spencer Stevens, the CTO of Sony Pictures. You would just wave, Spencer? And, hey, there he is.
Slide in front of me, but yes.
So we've got a great perspective from the movie studio part of what we're going to talk about today. Bernie Laramie, producer of CSI, talking about the new metadata that we have from the production side and the things that are available. We'll talk about some of the challenges about metadata, some of the things that we talked about on some of the other parts of this. Joseph Hopkins, Vice President for Verizon Digital Media Services. So we'll understand about the process of going through and distribution of content all the way through that process. Greenberg from TAPP, talking about audience development. Will Marks from Ovation. And let's see, who else we have? Erik Ramberg from Ericsson. Where's Erik? Ah, there he is. And Ian Greenblatt from ARRIS. Ian, I'm sorry, Ian. So as you can see, the amazing panel that we have, we're going to touch every part of the creation and the distribution of Hollywood entertainment through to the consumers. So I would like these as slides, but I'm just going to run through a few quick things here. So by 2018, we expect internet advertising to attract 36.6% of all global advertising, becoming the world's largest advertising medium. And again, I've got all these stats for you. Thanks for Verizon for supplying some of these too. 56% of all TV shows and movies among millennials, adults 18 to 25, are on devices other than television, according to Deloitte. Smartphones at this time comprise 12% of broadband viewing hours in 2015. That will increase to 18% in 2025, according to the Diffusion Group. So that's I came from Disney on the advertising research and development side, so I was responsible for projecting ratings and all that stuff. And when I was at KTRK in Houston, 70% of all of our revenue was profit. Obviously, in the television station industry, that's drastically changed now, especially when we see more of this advertising going towards the internet, which we'll see overtaking broadcast in the next year or two. But the interesting thing, and I want to thank Joe for this, by his marketing folks, TV still captures 72% of all viewing audience, which is really interesting. We hear the hype about Netflix and YouTube and all that, but the fact is 72% of all viewing is still by television. The interesting thing, when we look at 2012 to 2015, the time spent on video is up for 12 hours. So people are spending 12 hours more viewing video in 2015 than 2012. So the interesting thing that we have now with the technology, what we call over the top, when I say over the top, I mean consuming media without an RF transmitter, without a satellite transmitter, without cable, to your device, your phone, and everything else, is we have more information. Some of us call this metadata, but not only do we have information that we can pull from the creation of a movie, but we also have information from you as viewers. We know where you are if you opt in. We know what you like, if you log in with Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. So what that means for advertisers is they can target more effectively and be willing to spend more money on that targeting. So the benefit of what we have now with technology, you've all experienced this, time shifting. You can watch where you want to watch the TV program you want when you want to watch it. place shifting, where you can watch your movie on the plane or something else. You don't have to be home at television. And personalization. You can put your own channels together based on the technology we have. So what does that mean for a movie studio and a producer like Bernie? Increased engagement. You're more involved. You create loyalty. I mean, whoever thought of binge viewing? You know, now a producer like Bernie can put together 20 episodes and know that you will watch all of them. And that comes down to some of the things we'll talk about today that allows you to grow revenue like we've never had it before with this new technology. You know, it's, and again, I want to thank Ericsson for some of these slides, and you're going to see these. But it's really interesting. What they talk about is video buffering causes stress level jumps. Has anyone had video buffering issues when they watch anything? Anyone in the audience? 2 or 3. Okay. So it's interesting. It says it increases stress levels by 13%. The interesting slide, I want to thank you for this. When they take a look at mobile delays compared, they compare mobile delays comparable to watching a horror movie. So they have this slide, which is really interesting. I wish you had this slide about driving in Los Angeles traffic, because I think that'd be up there. But they have waiting in line at a retail store, and that's like 0.6%. Then they have like using a virtual reality set, and you're standing on the edge of a cliff, and that's like 0.8%. But when you're watching a horror movie, you're up to 0.9%, and that's equal to experiencing mobile delays. The other part of that would be equal to that, anxiety is doing a very difficult math problem under a time schedule. So all 3 of those are about the same, so I can relate to that. So we would take a look at what's driving this mobile traffic now. One, it's the involvement of larger devices on your mobile, so you can see larger images. More video content is available in a mobile medium. The uptake in services like HBO and Netflix are going to devices so you can get them. And also the convenience. You know, you can time shift. And also the important thing is the changing of consumer behavior. If you look at some millennials, you know, they don't ever watch a connected television, and they're multitasking. And the other part of this that I think Joe and the other folks can talk about is continued growth of G3 and G4 and soon to be G5 deployment, hopefully G5, with faster network connections. So I'm going to go to the production side, and then we'll go down, and then we're going to open it up for general discussions. So when we talk about metadata, in the old days, when you wrote a script for a movie, you'd write it on an old Royal typewriter. Then you would transfer it to your line producer, and he would put together a schedule. So they would write down the schedule on, you know, they're going to shoot this day, they're going to have this prop, they're going to have this wardrobe, and then they would give all this to editing, and then editing would throw that schedule stuff in the box, and they'd throw that up in Iron Mountain somewhere. So the interesting thing today is obviously you write a movie script, and you do it in software. Then you do a file transfer to a scheduling program. In that scheduling program, which again is software, that's when you schedule your actors for that scene. You schedule your props, you schedule your wardrobe. And then you schedule that through, you know, they shoot digitally. All that information, f-stop, location, and all that is recorded. And it gets, again, put into a file and put away. That's important because that's new metadata that can be used to generate advertising revenue. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So again, in the old days, what we used to call metadata is the stuff you needed for your newspapers, right? So you would get your LA Times and New York Post or whatever, and you would know and you pull out, you know, Thursday night, what actors are in the movie, what's the title of it, what is it about, you know, what's the genre? And that's all you knew. That was metadata. And up to this point, that's typically what you use when you watch TV Guide, and we'll talk about the Roe v. acquisition. When you looked at that, you had the title and you had some basic information. So again, now with all this digital information that's available, you have in that scene, I know the wardrobe, I know the props, I know where it was shot, I know the hotel the actors stayed at. And you say, why is that important? Because now I can tie that into an ad engine. So, you know, guys like Joe can tie that in and make it a profitable situation. Instead of a $100 cost per point, that may be a $100 lead for everyone that watches that movie. So again, this is the technology that we have today. So even though you see that advertising revenue overtaking, things are changing with the technology with the folks that we have on the panel right here. So when Bernie goes and approaches a financer and says, hey, I've got the greatest idea for this new crime episodic that I want to put together, he can also say, I want to license it in London, I want to license it in Germany, but now I have metadata. Maybe I want to license that metadata to guys like Verizon, so they can use that to populate those ads in a pre-roll or a pause and purchase situation. So that, again, that technology is available because these guys are putting together movies and they're thinking like this. So again, if you take, the data integration between, Spencer and Bernie producing a movie and putting that in a place, and you take the information from the user apps on these devices, on the smart TVs and the cell phones, and you put that together, you can do a few things. You can predict what someone may want to do or may want to buy if they log in with a Facebook and Twitter. But also at that point, you can also give good recommendations, unlike general recommendations that we have now. So the last technology slide then we'll jump into this, is when you take a look at where we are now. Again, I want to thank Ericsson for this. Mobile broadband subscription, $3.6 billion. In 2021, that's projected to be $7.7 billion. Monthly smartphone usage in North America is about 3.8 gigabytes per month. 2021, that's going to jump to 22 gigabytes. Mobile traffic of video right now is about 50%. At 2021, that's projected to be 70%. So if you're in, if you're a consumer, update your cell phone plan probably. But also, if you're in any part of this distribution plan, the enormous amount of bandwidth that's going about, enormous amount of storage that's required about this, even if on your production side, you've got to think about that. If you're producing a movie or a TV show, what do I want to keep and how long do I want to keep it and where do I keep it? Because this is all the information that needs to be out there. So, again, I just want to reintroduce our guys. Spencer Stevens with Sony, Bernie Laramie with CSI producer, Joe Hopkins with Verizon Media Services, Evan Greenberg with TAPP, Will Marks with Ovation, Erik Ramberg with Ericsson, and Ian Greenblatt with ARRIS. Ian?
You got it right.
Okay, sorry. So, to open off with general discussion points, when we see advertising increasing, the question is, so is an actor on YouTube with 5 million views equal to an actor on broadcast television with 5 million views? It's 5 million eyeballs, right? What do you guys think? Anyone?
I'm not touching that. I think the producer.
I'll let them.
We got advertising experts here and everyone.
It depends a lot on what you're trying to do with those 5 million eyeballs.
Yeah. Exactly.
Are you looking to develop something in OTT around them for mobile, for digital, do a movie, do a television show? So everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and 5 million eyeballs is great, whether it's followers, subscribers, Twitter followers, Instagrammers, and you just have to figure out where they fit in the puzzle. That's what we have to, frankly, we spend a lot of time doing, is looking at influencers online versus traditional, actors, actresses, writing talent, and figure out where they fit in the puzzle for us.
And just to add on to it, it's not just about followers, it's really more about the engagement that those followers have, what type of community is it really. I'm not saying that necessarily what the person has done, but you can buy 5 million followers, but can you get people to actually comment, retweet, like, and really talk about you with the other people in that community?
Kit Harington is a lot more sticky than anybody on YouTube, at least this week. For those of you that don't, everybody know who Kit Harington is? Jon Snow. Right? And that's pretty sticky because, as you pointed out in your opening comments, 72% still watching television, I believe. For a medium, this is as conservative as I am going to get all morning. For a medium that has had its demise predicted for at least 15 years, it's doing really well. And it's not going to go away easily. I suspect that what's going to happen is that it will eat its new media, social media surroundings, because it's still I believe, is still probably the most powerful medium we've ever invented, including the internet in terms of engagement. It's amazing how when we get one right, how well we do. Star Trek. We were just joking as we couldn't get the projector to work about Max Headroom. I did Max Headroom.
He was a producer, Max.
I was a producer of Max Headroom. 1987, and we're still joking about it. And my point is, and I really don't want to knock YouTube, but my point is that goes to your point about stickiness and engagement. How long does that stuff have in terms of life in the culture, that it becomes a part of the culture? And that's in everything that we do and everything that we're trying to create. That's obviously our goal. We're trying to make it so that, you know, it's Star Trek, it's et cetera, Game of Thrones currently. And I think that's the harder thing to do on YouTube, even though they can go from 0 to 5 million views in about 8 hours. That's the other side. That's much harder for television to do.
Okay. So another hot topic this week is about metadata, more specifically Rovi and TiVo. So I want to ask you guys, so you know, I touched on it basically, or briefly, but in your thoughts, what's more valuable in the long run, the moving image or the metadata? And who owns the metadata? I know Spencer's going to say one thing, but I think the guys, you know, if they were here from Rovi and TiVo, they might say something else.
Sure.
What do you guys think?
You can't find the moving image without the metadata. It's impossible to discover, recommend, search, fulfill, any of those things. You can't find the images, the content, the meat in the sandwich without the menu. And so ultimately, yeah, I still, listen, I come from a content perspective, so I think content is king. But if, I'm trying to think of an analogy where if anybody could find the king, would he still be king? The thing you talked about, and I tend to rant and rave about what's just happened in this last few weeks. Rovi, one of the 3 larger metadata providers in North America, my colleague to my left owns one of them called FYI, and then there's also Gracenote. Those are the 3 big silos. With Rovi acquiring TiVo, a offeror of set-top boxes to only about 1 million people, or about 1 million households, and dwindling, but owner of a terrific patent portfolio. The big one you know of is called the Time Warp patent. That's the pause button on your remote control. And Rovi owns the patents, owns a fairly significant patent family. Some of them are expired, but the rest of the continuations in part are incredibly valuable.
It's like over 6,000 patents, right?
We're talking about and has a wonderful relationship with Intellectual Ventures, who, if you haven't heard of them, they are the world's second largest patent troll. So you've literally just witnessed the creation of the Death Star.
So what does this mean for consumers and studios and guys that want to make TV shows and movies?
Cost of data, cost of content will go up.
Yeah.
I don't know, you guys really think that's the Death? I think it's like, it's almost like maybe 10 years ago it might have been the Death Star. Now it's like a little picture of the Death Star somewhere. And I feel like VDMS and other services, you know, they'll see it, they'll pay the fee, the tax, whatever it is, and they'll roll right past it. I don't think it's as scary as it would have been a decade ago.
I think the data will ultimately come from Gracenote because no one's going to want to do business with Rovi. But I think you'll still have to pay your Rovi tax. You either pay to license the portfolio or you pay in court, or you pay your lawyers to deal with it. So it's going to be one
Verizon
of
has
the
plenty of lawyers. Comcast has plenty of lawyers.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, exactly, and they'll be tied up in back rooms for sure. So the other aspect of that is with TiVo pushing hard on the FCC for the opening up the set-top boxes. You could see that as their other avenue at which to sort of try to break into the market, and Rovi sort of making these interesting moves. So yeah, they have a very interesting business model.
So, I mean, you touched on this. So a lot of changes are going on with the FCC also. So back in 2014, Congress instructed the FCC to open up set-top boxes, as you said. In February 2016, FCC began crafting the possible rules to give consumer these new devices. And then and FCC voted in February to take down the barriers for independent producers in diverse programming to get into pay TV subscribers. So what do you guys see with set-top boxes? I mean, if you were making a set-top box today, would you say for John, or do we, get out of this business and go into something else? And again, most importantly for the consumer, what does that mean? I mean, what do you guys see?
I want somebody else to start on this one. I'll back clean up since ARRIS is the world's largest set-top box provider.
A high volume, low margin business, definitely a specialized business if you want to get into. Yeah, I guess I'm conflicted about the whole FCC opening up the set-top box thing. I think if they had done it 10 years ago, it would have been a very different situation. Today, is it really going to solve anything for the consumer? I don't really think so. I think it may just open up, again, back to the TiVo Rovi thing, is it may just open up new avenues for them to push and to add their tax other places.
Yeah, I think the other thing about set-top boxes at the moment is we're really seeing them not just being set-top boxes in the sense of receiving an RF signal, but I mean they're over the top as well. And if you watch a video on demand service on a set-top box, it might be coming down on a carousel over the satellite transmission or in a set-top box, or it might be streaming over the internet. And with my DirecTV box, I can't really tell the difference unless I get some sort of congestion, which produces a little death spiral there.
Yeah, it's that migration from RF to IP.
Right, that's the
that made all the difference in the world. And currently we're in that hybrid step right now that you described perfectly. You can't really tell. It's a blended service. You can't really, unless you know exactly what you're looking for, it's really difficult to figure it out. Also, with the opening of the silos, for the first time, I believe, both Netflix and Hulu were available on an MVPD's lineup. That's a pretty big move to offer an OTT experience on a traditional cable pipe.
I don't think we're nearly as far as where we can be or where we will be in terms of doing that. There's still, still is a lot of tape and glue to make those two systems kind of look kind of okay to the individual, the consumer.
Where do you think the obstacles are?
Sorry, what?
Where do you think the obstacles are? I mean, the consumers want, content every possible way, but there are obviously some roadblocks. Or some of these patent issues, or what do you say?
No, I would say security definitely is a lot of them. They're completely different security regimes, and so those have to be reconciled. Then there are some just business obstacles as well, just from the establishment. Delivers of the content. They'll sort of want things differently, and so some will want to have a complete silo, and some of them, will say, "Oh no, we love an integrated experience." But those are things that all get worked out over time. It will get better. I think we're in a great place. We're kind of just the beginning of sort of realizing that consistent user experience for the consumer. That easy, discover, personalized, just for me. I'm there. Turn it on. It's great. I don't care where it came from. It's just there. But we're just on the edge of it.
Yeah,
Just
I was to say the UI. You make a really good point, because the UI issues I think are still hard for the consumer right now. You go into the Hulu experience and I navigate in a certain way, then I jump out and go to Netflix and I navigate in a completely different way. Then on my PlayStation I hear the fan kick up and I'm waiting for that to happen when it jumps into the third thing. No dig on my beautiful PlayStation that I adore to death. So
Really different
I'm waiting for Uncharted to come out. It's driving me crazy that it's late. But that they have to sort of get that a little straightened out, and I feel like that's still a piece on the consumer side that they have to wrestle with. Everyone has to wrestle with.
Yep.
I would also say it's probably our install base is probably one of the bigger problems that faces quick innovation. Because you're talking about a massive market, you're talking about incredibly expensive network build-outs with both bandwidth and with equipment. And it takes a long time to turn over to that new series of equipment, that new set of equipment that is capable of offering these new blended experiences. So as those systems come offline, those legacy systems come offline, and newer IP-only systems are the norm, not the outliers, you'll definitely see a vast acceleration of those really exciting
Yeah, I think that's a
services.
huge point. The capital investments that are, to get those set-top boxes out there, it's just massively huge. Tens of billions for not even a giant-sized carrier. And it's interesting to look at how telcos do it versus cables. Comcast doing great job with X1, pushing X1 out.
40,000 set-tops a day
Yeah.
for Comcast.
Huge
Moving to the
capital
X1.
investment for them to do that. But it is sort of like an overlay type of system, and it's and that has its own sort of set of challenges. How do they message to the consumer? How do they really sort of retain people when they're like, oh, I can't get it. Why can't I get it? Those types of things.
And the flip side is consumers, I think, especially we were talking about younger consumers before, I think they really want to own their own thing. Like if
Yeah.
they want it on a Roku, they want it on a Roku. If they want it on their Apple TV, that's how they want to get their programming. So we talk about this in our office all the time, this idea that you get this box stuck in your house, a guy comes in a truck, it never gets upgraded, it never gets new features, you get a new one once every 10 years, it's sitting there with the blinking 12 o'clock and it's dusty. I feel like that era is going to end sooner rather than later. And about your point about the acceleration, that's it. People still line up for the new Galaxy Edge. They line up for the new iPhone. So people are going to want these sexy new devices. And they're going to want a new, fresh version of one every 2 or 3 years. And I feel like that's something that as an industry, the ARRIS's, the big players in the space, Pace, all of them, they have to figure out how do they play in that? How do they make themselves consumer friendly and something that a consumer would go buy in a store?
Yeah, well, one of the challenges then is security, for these devices and transition as we go to higher, premium content, higher resolution
4K,
content,
8K,
HDR,
exactly, yep.
et cetera, those types of things. How do we protect it?
Yep.
How do we on these devices that are just can be rooted and everything, how do you make sure that you can actually have a hardware to trust, all those things like that. Therein lies the challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think security from both parts, right? I mean, not only from a studio's point, but for a consumer's point. How do I know that I'm
Yeah.
protected
Yeah.
and that I've opted in for all this information going out? So how do you see that getting better? Do you see it being a set-top box? Do you see it being an app? Or do you see it some FCC regulation coming out? What do you guys think about that security? Because it comes from both sides, right?
Are you talking about security from the consumer? You're talking about sort of privacy?
I think,
That's
yeah,
what I
privacy
think.
on the
Personal
consumer
data.
side, but on the content ownership side, obviously your movies. So,
Well, I think the content ownership, I think the main difference between an over-the-top service and a broadcast service is that the broadcast services, cable and satellite, use a CAS system, but a CAS system is designed primarily to protect the service, not the content. And then DRMs, which are used for every other form of delivery, are designed to protect the content. They also protect the service, but primarily they're designed to protect the content. I think, though, we're seeing such ubiquity in the deployment of DRMs these days, but Widevine built into Android Play Ready runs on pretty much every platform. I'm not sure that there is really much of a challenge there, other than the fact that the level of content protection the studios are asking for went up understandably with 4K, with UHD, because the high definition content protection we have today, those standards were really set at the end of the last century, which is almost 20 years ago. So it's time for an upgrade. If you look at a CAS system, though, conditional access system, for a long time they've had a hardware root of trust. I think we're just asking for the same thing in a DRM, and actually for content that's more valuable than typically goes over the majority of channels at the moment, which are HD and SD.
Yep. At least I'll maybe speak to consumer data point of view. A lot of it is building trust, and establishing it and keeping it, and being transparent and clear about how data is used. Us as Ericsson, we build platforms, we work with operators, and so we have to build that trust with them, and then so that they can build the trust of the consumer. We have to enable the operator to have that flexibility to precisely determine what it is they retain, how long they retain it, how systems, when their pools are mixed or not mixed, all those types of things. But it really goes down to establishing the trust in the chain and maintaining it. So,
makes sense.
And being open about how you use it. I mean, that's one
Yep.
of the Verizon policies, being very open about the way we use the data we collect, et cetera. And then if you can benefit the end user by providing, back to the kind of these things all tie together with advanced metadata, which allows us to make more informed decisions around personalized content, personalized advertising. Talk about the increased cost of metadata, but if we can use that to also increase the return on advertising, because I can make it more personal with multi-touch attribution and all these types of things, It's sort of the same, it's all ties together in many ways. And then if you can improve the security of the set-top box, but also give the consumer the content they want when they want it, advertising that's relevant to them. They know that the current TV model is in fact kind of proven, and so they realize that much of this content is in fact ad-supported. They just want ads that are relevant to them, right? And that increases consumption, viewing time and engagement hours, et cetera. So,
Yeah,
tie it all together for you, Steve.
I was going to say, he's not even looking at my slides, but he just tied into the other one. So we're used to advertising on television. You know, we're used to that model of we'll tolerate this as long as we get to see it for free. But when you look at the OTT model, it's really a subscription model. That's the only one that's been successful up to this point. Like a Netflix, you pay your $9 or whatever, and you can make you can eat on that, off of that. So the question is, with what we have today with metadata and the technology, so how do we increase the money for advertising at this point?
Escape the pod.
Escape the pod.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
The pod is Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 in a 22.5 minute, 30-minute show. You've got couple breaks in between, and post. That's where advertising traditionally has been limited to. 15, 30, 60-second spots in those pods. Escaping the pod, turning the entire episode into an advertising opportunity is where you go if you're looking to increase the size of the pie. Because right now it's zero sum, right? There's only so many minutes in the day and so many ad opportunities in a half-hour segment. The only way to make the pie bigger is to quite literally increase the size of the pie. So if you can escape the pod, you can do that. Also, you need to come up with a different vehicle for doing so. What I mean by that is, don't just, if you're going to sell outside the pod, don't just sell an actual ad, sell an idea, sell an emotion. Let's say I'm Coca-Cola and I want to buy joy, because Coca-Cola's big thing is joy and happiness and friendship. If I want to buy a moment in a show that's about joy, I'm going to pay big money for that if I'm an advertiser, and that's what I'm looking for. That's a brand reinforcement opportunity. And so that, you asked a tough question, but I'd say the lowest hanging fruit right now that increases the size of the pie the quickest is to escape the pod.
And I think if you are going to stick with the pod, I would do a lot of research into what pods you're buying. A lot of shows, if you're watching them online, even through the network site, you end up like with the consumer gets the same ad over and over again. The pods are sometimes broken. The ad loader doesn't quite load it the right way. It causes things to freeze. You have to reset your browser, and you have to watch it all over again.
And it looks different than the movie, right?
Yeah, it's different. Well,
Some
television,
cases,
you
not-
get a bunch of different, a variety of commercials. It runs through. If you are a brand and you are gonna buy OTT, do your research on how those ads are being delivered, because it can be a really bad experience for the consumer.
Yeah, I was going to look at it a little from sort of a different macro level, not on the breaking up the show or the content, because you certainly, yes, you can do a lot of different things with that. I think giving consumers choice, which we're seeing, Hulu you can watch for free, you can pay $8.99, you can pay $11.99. I think you get different ways that people can go into it. I think the Guardian newspaper just announced something yesterday that's very similar. There's a free version of the Guardian. There's like a $2.99 a month subscription. And now there's a $4.99 truly ad-free premium with live video every day and Skypes with the editors, and it's really in-depth deep dive. So I think giving consumers choices on how they're going to get their ads or which level they're willing to pay to have ads in, out, or a little bit of both, a little blend, and that's what we're looking to do with some OTT. On the programming, on the network side initiatives, not network like the transport network, but as a TV network. That's what we're looking to do going into the end of this year and into next year.
So this is an interesting point. So I want to ask
I'm
everyone
happy to say
across the
something
board.
interesting this morning.
Are you
My
seeing,
day's over. My day's over. I'm done. I'm all tapped out.
are you seeing the advertising at the back, or are you seeing approaching guys like Bernie when they're writing and putting the shows together, saying, hey, we're Coca-Cola, we got like $1.5 million budget, can we help you fund this thing? But, we're looking for like a feel. And Bernie goes through all his scripts and said, hey, I got a feel script.
Yeah, we do it throughout, and I want to hear Bernie's thoughts on that as well. But I mean, we do that throughout the food chain. We literally
Interesting.
we have shows that come in from CAA, from William Morris, and they say, hey, this is great, let's go to this advertiser and do it. So even from inception to things where we have something that we want to do that's internally developed, and we'll call the ad sales team and we'll say to them, hey, what's up with Subaru? What's up with Delta Faucet? What's up with United Airlines? When would they want to come in? Or to your point about the influencers online, we have a group that looks at influencers kind of 24/7. And so we might say, we really love what this artist is doing. We found this group in, Stephen, who's in the audience here, found this really cool artist called Kuma Films, and we hooked them up with Jaguar, and we hooked them up with other brands. And so then we can say, does that become a TV show, a digital short, all the different places. And it can go through the Verizon system. It can go through our cable distribution. It can go through an OTT play just with Apple as in iTunes. There's a lot of things we can do with it.
Interesting. So Bernie, when you get a hold of something like this in the network and the studio comes down to you and says, hey,
Considering that for most of my career, we have thrown most of our metadata away, if you guys
Yep.
realize, we have boxes. You said an Iron Mountain.
yeah, you don't throw it away. It's in boxes.
In the garage.
Well, that's true. In Iron Mountain, someplace. And I've had to go back a couple of times and try and find it.
But they're written
Trust
too.
me when I tell
It's
you.
not digital sometimes.
We've thrown it away. We fulfilled all of our deliverable requirements, but what we haven't done, and there's any number of examples of this, the wardrobe list, generally now done by my wardrobe supervisor on my last show on a spreadsheet, incomplete, and not really giving me enough information to sell you guys anything. However,
So hold
it
on
has
a
great
second.
value.
So if you do a show
Yeah.
and you've got someone that says, I've
Yeah.
got Levi's, they want to sponsor it, and you said, I got jeans in there. I'm not sure what scene it's in. So you'd go to your wardrobe lady or man, and you would say what?
I would say, if Levi's is paying me enough money, I would tell them how wonderful it is for them to buy my Levi's jeans that's because that's what's going to be in the show. That's how that would work, and that becomes a negotiation between, and it's a three-way negotiation really. It's really the studio who thinks that they own that information, the producers who are trying to get the production on in time and don't have time to deal with this, and the creatives who are saying, excuse me, they will be
Hudson.
Dockers,
Yeah.
right? I'm sorry, the look of this show is Dockers, it's not Levi's, all right? Second point to that, my buddy produced Desperate Housewives, Eva Longoria. The character runs into trouble. Financial trouble. Hubby goes to jail, if I'm not mistaken, or whatever. Doesn't really matter. Character in trouble. She's beautiful. She's going to go out and get a modeling career. She's going to advertise Chryslers. No, she's not. Not according to her commercial agent, because you've just crossed her into an area I can't do. She's obligated to the show. She's supposed to do what we tell her to do on the show, but she also has contracts because that means she can't do Fort. It means et cetera, et cetera. So what we want and what we're going to get are going to be two very different things. I think that where we start, however, is not necessarily at the being a creative. I'm going to go, it's not your side, it's my side that starts this, right? We come up with the concept. Thank you very much. However, note, General Foods or General Mills brings you the Lone Ranger. So we've been doing this all the way back to black and white television.
Exactly. Yep.
Hallmark Hall of Fame TV movies at every holiday season just so that they can show you those ads. We have always clearly had a symbiotic relationship. I think that where we go is so that we can provide downstream much more metadata,
Yeah.
and that's where we have to be.
Yep.
In other words, we have to work together to find ways to encourage my crew to make sure that they're turning in the information that we need in order to get you guys the information that you need. Because I got all sorts of stuff that that is of interest. By the way, it will never include where my actors are staying
Yeah.
until well after they're no longer there.
Yeah.
So and
I
I
say
bring
the
that
travel-
up not as
the
a, I
travel
bring that up not as a
support
joke, but as a point of the security issues that we're talking about.
But after you wrap.
What we have and when we can release that becomes second point. And from a creative point, we're all talking about these as disparate in some ways or another. There's the Roku and there's the smart TV. I finally got my smart TV. My God, it's wonderful. I threw out the box. It was really connected it to the Wi-Fi. It's great, except every second day, my carrier, and I won't mention names, decides to recycle, and my smart TV isn't smart enough to remember the password to get me back on Wi-Fi, so I have to reset that. So it's not that smart, it's third grade. But what we're now working on developing, and the show that I'm pretty hot about developing right now, actually has components in it that were designed to be used in the interactive world. So we have a character that's designed to feed us into the YouTube world, into the extreme sports world, into second screen, into synchronous second screen, which is what I'm really excited about, and so that the whole show, although it is very much linear plot driven for that large TV market, it has all of the other components that hopefully will tie it together for both advertising and millennial engagement.
So question on that, and we briefly touched on it. So you put that metadata in at production. It goes through the entire process, so a guy like Joe can say,
Yeah,
we'll
we
put
can-
an ad here.
Not necessarily ad here. We could even take the data off of that and create ID3 tags that are timestamped throughout the entire asset. So
Right.
if I can say, well, I don't want to bring up Amazon, but one of the things that scares me about Amazon, I have an Echo, but if I'm watching at 2 minutes and 40 seconds and I say, Alexa, I want that shirt, she knows my voice, it'll be on my doorstep the next morning.
Yeah.
And if you can take a share of that as the content producer, that becomes a
interesting.
nice
And, right, and I think that one of the things that's about it, because I've read any number of articles about this, and a lot of the technologists, the Googles of the world, and you'll see several articles, they're pretty frequent now, coming out with what I would call reverse engineering a video. They can look at the content and tell me what's in it.
Yeah.
So they know I'm wearing a suit jacket.
Yeah. Well, not just
et cetera.
not just a suit jacket, but ideally what manufacturer, et cetera. And then,
And with all respect, good luck with that.
no, I know. It's
Uh,
a big deal.
because,
I would
you
say
know,
that's that.
we're not there.
Yeah, I say
It's-
not,
that's
not
an
even to
ideal
step
state.
on the toes on
And
that
a lot,
one.
and a lot like multi-touch
but it's
attribution.
easier
You've
than
heard
that.
about Jennifer Aniston's sweater.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
ran
yeah.
for 20
Yes.
years
It's a
now,
lot
and
like-
no one's ever bought that sweater.
We're still going that.
But I think to your point where you're really onto something is that you say something to Alexa and then something delightful happens. Like
Yes.
you get it as something pops up on your phone, or a text message comes in, or it unlocks a piece of video
Exactly.
because you have that plot point,
Yeah.
or you get an email the next morning that has a customized wow, did you know what happened on the show behind? That's those delight points that consumers I think would be into, and it's that fine line between creepy, not creepy. How invasive is it? Philips and Sci-Fi did that great thing with the hue lights around some of the movies and some of the shows last season, and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
Like you're watching a show, your lights are changing color, your stereo is sort of coming in and coming out. That's really fun. I think the sweater. That's
Yeah,
what
I know, I
Jennifer
agree.
Aniston,
It's
God bless her,
far-fetched.
and her sweater.
I think
no
the
one's ever
more-
bought one.
The more realistic approach is what we're doing with multi-touch attribution. And we're not there yet, but the idea would be if we have some information about who you are and we can connect the dots, so you search for a Patagonia jacket because you're going to go on a ski trip and you're searching on your mobile phone, and then you have a Millennial Media app on your phone, and we follow you to the store, and you do these 5 or 6 things, which is the concept of multi-touch attribution, that lead to a buying pattern or buying action. And in parallel, because the way our system is designed, it's sessions-based. So every time a user hits play, there's a one-to-one relationship between the user. We insert the ad server side, so it's a much more TV-like experience. Ads aren't blocked at the client. Everything is conditioned the same. There's no black between ads, all those types of things. But if you then hit a news outlet, and we know because you've logged in that you are an Apple investor and a techie and you like commodity futures, you're going to see personalized feed that's the Apple update and the tech update, and then that ad opportunity goes to a programmatic backend that says, hey, this mapped against 110 million users or whatever that number is, we're within a percentage point probability this guy's in a buying mode. Patagonia sees that and says, bingo, it's no longer a CPM, it's literally cost per impression. What are they willing to pay for that spot? You do move a little bit away from the concept of the premium negotiated marketplaces when you have this much data.
And the flip side, from the
in a
content,
even in a traditional model.
from the corollary, let's say, from the content production side is, you know that data about someone searching for Patagonia, they want that jacket, they're going
Yep.
seeing, and then again, you get that text message or that alert that says, hey, we have a Patagonia documentary that's
Sure.
available. Do you want it
No question.
waiting at home on
That-
your set-top box when
right.
you get home? Do you want to
And
watch
that
it on
ties
your
into
phone?
discoverability
All
and
of
all the
that
other
fun,
kinds of
like
things
that's
for
the
marketing.
fun end of it,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just like buy the jacket, buy the jacket, buy the jacket, and
No,
then,
but
and you know, it's like
Light,
when you
track,
you have to admit
retain.
that
you search for shoes and then shoes follow you around
So
the
that's
web
the bad
for 3
side.
months.
That's
you
the
know,
bad
it's like,
side. That's
Yeah.
the
if I see
reactionary
one more
side.
pair of Chukka boots, brown 9M, I'm gonna throw my TV
Yeah.
out the window. Like it's like every site I go to now is like Chukka boots, 9M, blah blah blah, same
Couldn't
thing.
agree with you more.
Yeah.
But that's a reactive, and
Exactly.
we're talking about proactive.
So I want to ask an important question about all this. This all involves metadata, either on the app side
Yeah.
or on the content side. So the question is, who owns the metadata? Is it the guy?
The content-
Hey, who's gonna? I know Bernie's gonna
The
say.
original creator of it.
Right.
The original creator owns
Content owner.
it. They may license rights to it.
Right.
You know, so I mean, it's not very useful if it doesn't get out of the Iron
Exactly.
Mountain.
Or it's not-
and get
I
distributed.
own it, but it's in Iron Mountain. Doesn't
Exactly.
help
Or
me
if
a
it's,
lot.
yeah,
admit it.
exactly. Or if it's
It's
not
sort of
that moving
Bernie and the
image.
studio.
Yeah.
You know,
Who
it's
sits and
whoever
launches
paid
dollars
Bernie
in
for the
metadata.
production.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Consider some of that metadata could also be the server
the
logs
copy-
coming off a video on demand server in the back end of
It's all of it.
Comcast. Okay,
Yeah.
so Comcast owns that, or at least they'll assert that they do, and that usage data. And I saw somebody here from ComScore. That stuff's real sexy because that tells
Yeah.
you down to the very second what you've watched, when you tuned in, when you tuned out, what you tuned out to, where you went.
I was gonna say, yeah, where you came from.
Where you came from,
and
where
this
you
is-
went.
and where you
And so
went.
this is where if you're really migrating toward an IP set-top box and you consolidate around your distribution protocols, you can also aggregate that data. And so one of the things we've done differently is moved away from a multitude of protocols and standardized around a single protocol. And this way we can, for certain large content owners who want to go out on an IT or IP-based direct-to-consumer MVPD, I don't want to leave names out of this, but they can now say, instead of giving you a mezzanine asset, here's my playback URL. We have the flexibility when a request comes in to append the URL with any number of ad campaigns. So if I do a deal with you to say, here's my content, but our relationship is that you can insert whatever ads you'd like, it's still the same playback URL, but the ad campaign that it calls to the ad decision system is different than the one I might call on my owned and operated properties. So now I have the flexibility from a business model perspective, and I also retain the data. And the biggest problem right now, not biggest, but one of the big problems is that you're handing off mezzanine assets to multiple MVPDs, and the data. I mean, what
Yeah.
data do you get back from Netflix? What data do you get back from many of the
Nothing, yeah.
MVPD partners? Very little. So
Yeah.
if you can take control of that data, which is what we're trying to enable and what we're enabling, I think it puts you in a much better position in a lot of ways.
And I think this all sort of leads into a little bit of a hot take that I might have is that I don't actually believe anymore that content is king, and I don't necessarily mean that something else is king, but I think OTT is killing the monarchy. Biggest example I can give is who here is watching Horace and Pete? By raise of hands, anybody? We got one person. Now, how many people would be interested in sort of a Cheers-like show starring Steve Buscemi, Alan Alda, Louis C.K., and Jessica Lange? Anyone might maybe want to watch that? Okay, well, it exists. You can go to Louis C.K.'s website and pay $30 for 10 episodes. And it's really good, and no one's watching it because he didn't promote it, and he really just sent out an email. So you can have the best content, but now it's almost a little more democratic that maybe content's the president, but you do need the promotion, you need the metadata, you need all this stuff so that even if you have
campaign.
something really great, that you can actually get people to watch it.
So here's a question on that. So great content. We have great art, enormous amount of great artists in this town and all over the world. But they haven't gone through the studio process or anything else. So as we talked about, you can build it, but they're not going to come, right? So when is the point when a creator moves off of a broadcast or moves off of Netflix, moves off of YouTube or Amazon and says, you know what, I'm doing my own app because I've got my 2 million followers or whatever that number is. What do you guys think?
Yes.
Well, I think, I mean, not to sound, like rough on this, but I think that question's already settled business. I think when you look at, again, the point about engagement and everything, when you look at the PewDiePies of the world and you look at these other people with these giant followers, they're turning down TV projects, movie projects all the time because they do control their ecosystem, they do control their distribution, and they get people to show up. So it is I think there's a world. I don't think content's not king. I don't know if I agree with that. I would say that there's just a lot more places people can go to find that. And if Louis C.K. had just taken a ride over to Beverly Hills and met with the Netflix team. It could have been distributed on Netflix and would have been the
They
hot
all
show of
wanted
the
it.
month.
He said, I don't want to do
But that was his choice to make, and now he's whining about it online, saying, "Oh, poor me, I lost all this money doing this." Well, you could have made a heck of a lot of money
That's not-
doing it.
yeah.
But, I mean, so it is.
Yeah,
It was his call to make.
Didn't
He had the
expire.
power. And that's
He's
what
eventually
he
going to
did.
bring it
Of course it
to
will.
a network, and
It's-
he's not actually
Exactly.
saying that I lost. It's like things were taken out of context in the media.
No,
but-
I'm not saying he's bankrupt, but he said he lost money on the project, which he probably did because he devastated
currently
project.
is.
Welcome to
Yeah,
Hollywood.
but
Right,
he
so
lost
totally
money. He
standard,
lost
yeah.
money on the project
But now he
because
owns
he
the
didn't
asset.
do it
That's
right.
right, exactly.
I mean, come
Yeah.
on. You had what was the lineup of stars on that thing?
Right.
And you didn't go to Netflix? Are you out of your mind?
Uh-huh.
Because but content is still king. Taxi, way back in the day when we only had linear television, Taxi was on one network, and I'm not going to remember which one. I think it was on ABC, and then it switched to another network. Its audience switched with the content.
Yeah.
We will easily abandon cable as soon as we can in most cases because we don't like. That's the delivery system, but it was the only way that we could get the content. So content is not. It may be king, but it may not be a very successful king.
The monarchy is dead or dying, is all I say.
Well,
I don't know if I agree with that.
Nobody's
I
gonna
think-
Becoming
Yeah.
more
I-
democratic.
nobody goes
I
out.
think
hang
you're
on.
actually-
Well, it's
let's-
more
Nobody
as-
goes out on Friday night to watch a Paramount movie.
Yep.
Nobody
Correct.
that I know of goes out to watch a Paramount movie. We go out to watch a Disney movie, and that's about as close as this town has to total. It's this word Disney represents a certain type of content, and therefore I will allow my child to go to that because it says Disney on it. All right? And they have to protect that brand at all costs. All of the other majors have gotten rid of all of that product identification. Now it's really, I mean, you're right. The monarchy is being moved to sides where there's a parliament now, and they're just a figurehead, I guess. But the point of it is that we still want to see the Queen. Yeah.
So
Tony
question,
Blair,
if-
not so much.
if you're
Let me
gonna,
ask you a question though. I mean, we talk about all the people that can make content, right? And
Right.
there are many more outlets to it right now. But the other side of it is, do you think that the recommendation engines themselves are going to start narrowing it down? Because the thing about cable or anything where you just flip channels, there's a certain amount of serendipity involved in there, right?
Oh,
Just
absolutely.
stagger across things,
Yeah.
and that's where I think a lot of shows suddenly pick up. But I mean, what happens where you've got the whole experience curated and customized for the particular viewer? Doesn't that narrow it down and actually make it much more difficult for people to break in with new shows?
I think that does make it more difficult to break into successful shows.
Yes.
And that, I mean, Les Moonves, the earnings call just yesterday, he's CBS, right? Bring it on, I'm ready, we're going to do great, our sales are going to be up. We're not at all concerned about all of these developing platforms. He wasn't even bashful about it, right? He was downright arrogant. And so your point is well made. What we're looking for is that kind of host for the content that's going to give it the best, the best promotion and all of the other things that are going to help breed it to success.
Yeah, everybody thinks they don't want curation, but they really always want
Yes,
curation.
yes.
That's
They just
the
want
irony
curation
to
for
it.
them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Or as Robert Redford says, everybody's an independent filmmaker until they get a studio deal.
The thing for me though is I go and look at Netflix or the others, and I see all those icons up there, and it's a bit like when I'm hungry and I go to the refrigerator and I open that refrigerator and I stand there for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Paradox of choice.
Yeah.
Right.
And what was interesting for me is what Crackle, which is our over-the-top ad-supported service, has done is you flip to the Crackle service on your Roku, and it's already streaming content to you.
Yep.
And then it's got a micro-curated selection of movies, right? And that is really interesting to me because you can change the channel and find something else that's available, or else you can go through the micro-curation, or else you can go out to the sort of genre curation that other people use. But what's interesting about that is the fact that it's kind of blending the linear network experience
Yep.
with
Yep.
the curated experience.
Yep.
And that was one of the things when I was at Intel with the Intel Media Box. That was one of the fun things about it, is when you turned it on, there was always something playing. So whether it was from Red Bull or from a major studio or a film or a trailer, it always felt very lively. And then you had that experience of switching channels and being able to go back and forth in time. And that was one of the great things about that product that hopefully Verizon will eventually do something interesting with now that they bought that division. And it's something that Crackle does very nicely.
Yeah, absolutely.
so question, just getting back to Louis C.K. So if you were to advise him, he was going SVOD or AVOD, what would you recommend? What's a better model? Does he hit YouTube now, or what's?
Why be
Yeah,
exclusive?
you can do both.
Yeah,
Why-
well, yeah,
It's about
multiple
licensing,
models.
territory. I mean,
yeah.
I think he puts it
Stratify
out
it,
to- comedians
target
it
it
out
to the
to
right
bid.
segments,
Comedians and
you know?
cars has done fantastic.
We're at a system where the platforms can target things, you know, so target the business model too, not just the ads.
Yeah, it's just windowing. I mean, he's gone and he wanted to sell it all by himself and make as much money he could up front, and then when that dries up, he's going to license it to Netflix or the FX or the highest bidder, and it will be on a service or a TV network, and he'll make a ton of money off it.
So what other advice would you give to someone like him or someone else starting, you know, a show that wants to get out there? Any other specific advice?
Just be sure that, you know, if you're, well, it's like, make sure that you can sell it in that first window, and you do have the engaged audience that does want that first run of it that you can maybe get 100% of, and then be sure that someone wants to buy it afterwards too.
Makes sense. So, do you see, do viewers stay on the same platform, or do we see social media making them jump to different platforms? What do you see them doing? I mean, is someone just a YouTube guy, or do you see them going back and forth, and what's that motivation to make them switch? Is the social media that much of a influencer on that sort of quantum change?
Facebook. I think Facebook's going to be a very, very big disruptor for video,
Yeah.
for ad-supported video, and even for premium video in the next 18 to 36 months. I think they are ramping that up dramatically.
When they figure out monetization.
Yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous scale. They're ramping that up right now. And so when you see things like, you know, a show like an E-News being you know, pushed in there kind of live every day, you're going to see a lot more programming, and that right-hand bar is frankly, I think they think if they can steal a few percentage points from YouTube every given quarter, you know, you're talking billions and billions of dollars. So they think it's a big move.
Interesting. So the other thing that leads to questions is, do you think the cost of content is too high? You take a look at, you know, in the old model. Well, for a business to exist, right?
We want it higher, exactly.
You know, in the old days, when I was with Disney, you know, we basically had 50% of our revenue went to our content costs. Now you see in Netflix, like 70% of their
Yep.
revenue is
Yep.
content costs. Can that continue? I mean, how does that?
Understand why Netflix has to pay that, because that's their entire product, right? And the offerors of that content know that. They're not stupid. They know that without that content, Netflix is nothing more than a nice to have that might be used as a babysitter occasionally. But without better content, and if you take a look at the size of Netflix's catalog, it's shrunk dramatically.
Yeah.
I mean, dramatically.
Recently,
Yep.
too.
They wiped out a bunch of stuff that wasn't performing, and there was also a different. There's been a series of renegotiations on content cost and deals. Right, some things just simply aren't going to be available in there.
But that reduction in the content also goes back to my point about the recommendation engines. Because if they're not recommending stuff that people are not watching, perhaps that's the reason people are not
Yeah,
watching it.
exactly.
No, I
Self-reinforcing.
completely agree. They do need to. Netflix needs to update the recommendation engine. You had mentioned before, is recommendation valuable? That's a tough commodity business.
Yeah.
At this point, you know, we were talking about high volume, low margin. Digital Smiths got bought by TiVo, which is now Rovi, so it all comes full circle, folks. You've got Think Analytics, which is the biggest one in Europe. You've got Tivio, and you've got AT&T, Ginny, and that's about it. That's a really small group of folks that aren't making a ton of money on curating perfectly what it is you might want to watch.
And that's still not
Well, they have
perfect,
also
right?
very limited input in terms of the data source.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So you
exactly.
watch these 3 movies, and now I'm just going to magically decide.
Yeah, the bootstrap problem.
Yeah.
I don't know who you are. I'm taking a giant guess on who you might be and what you might want to watch. So I have to pull myself up on my bootstraps. That's why they call it the bootstrap problem. You're absolutely right. Without
Yeah.
that, actually, VDMS is perfectly positioned
Yeah.
to fix that.
Well, and
You,
we'll get there.
you own every part of the
yeah,
model
I mean,
there.
we
That's
do.
right.
We
I
have
think
a
the
big
age
test.
of the independent recommendation suppliers,
Has to go
Yeah.
away.
it needs to have the data, it needs to have the end-to-end experience, it needs to be able to tie it into, you know, the promotions and the content sources, and yeah, it needs to be in a larger platform. It's really, I think, the way things are moving. And in general, I would say across the industry, consolidation, it has been happening, it will continue to happen greatly. Certainly for the MVPDs, it's they're still getting more, more and more of their profits eaten away by content costs. So, we'll see what happens to that industry. But it's definitely, content costs are going up continuingly. So, and that's why you see consolidation again there as well. So.
Well, with all these consolidations and with the technology advances, how are we going to experience entertainment in 2020? What's the next big leap that you guys see?
I don't know about a leap, but we certainly
Yeah.
believe that this is going to be
Yeah.
the primary consumption device. I mean, throughout most of the day for most people. So we're trying to build we built a full end-to-end ecosystem, to your point, and because we control every piece of the pie from ingest through consumption, we have a lot of different data sources to draw from, not just to proactively solve problems, to increase the end user's experience and the quality of experience and the scale and reliability and all those types of things which are critical to us, but also those are input sources for more accurate recommendations, more personalized experiences, more personalized advertising. So I think for us, it's a mobile first initiative.
So I'm only going to disagree slightly, only in that I think it's splintering is what it is. It's going to be just
Sure.
fractional all over the place. Everything, right now mobile is a smaller but growing. Well, now it's going to be on a par with the big screen,
Yeah.
with all the other,
No, I
the
agree.
tablets, the
Yeah.
other things. It's going to be all over the place, and so that's going to be a big challenge. Then how do you monetize that? How do you have a consistent experience across all of those? Those are big, huge challenges.
Yeah.
But they're just people you consume on different devices for different reasons. They're solving different needs. They're
That's
different
it.
points in time,
Yep.
and also just different demos of
How
course.
long
as
will
well.
you
different
have? Is it a
geographies.
bite, a snack, a meal?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
also seeing a convergence of the platforms. I mean, all of Sony's current TVs are Android TVs, and to a large extent they run the same apps as the phone will.
Yep.
And you've also got things like Chromecast or AirPlay mirroring, which really allow you to start it here, you watch it here, and if you want a big screen, you
Yeah,
just go
exactly.
to it.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm not totally convinced that it is even going to be a different platform rather than a different size screen. But I think by 2020 we'll start to see the emergence of something else, which is we'll see virtual reality devices mature, and we'll start to see the emergence of augmented reality devices. And at that point, if you've got enough resolution in your headset, then you simply put up an IMAX screen in front of you.
Yeah, yeah. Even if it's a
And then
passenger pair of
the
glasses.
phone starts looking at the
That's right.
person.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
I don't know about 2020, but it's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Augmented-
so we'll start
augmented
seeing the
reality.
emergence of
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I want to point
yeah.
out,
A
2020 is like next week,
Yeah.
right? We've
Well,
moved
not
really
technology,
quickly.
it's not.
Yeah.
It was
Fair
last
enough.
week. It was
Next
last
month
week.
is.
Exactly.
Whole generation, two generation.
Spencer made a really important distinction between VR and and augmented reality. Augmented reality, that Terminator vision, extra stuff overlaid on what you're already seeing, versus VR, which is a completely, totally immersive
Versus
and
360 video.
exactly, and then also a very solo experience. I can allude to why someone might be using VR in a solo experience and use your own imagination for it. But that's a very solitary viewing experience. And most advances in technology and video technology have come through adult entertainment or sports. Sports is a co-watching thing very frequently. That's something you want to do with a group of people. I'm not going to touch the other one.
Yeah, I was gonna say long on AR, kind of short on VR. But I was gonna say by 2020, to your point about the devices, everyone's been talking about all the platforms. If you could, the seamlessness is what I'm missing.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
in the car, I'm
Agreed.
listening to a podcast, I want to walk into the house, I want it to pick up where it left off and be
Yeah.
smart enough to not be draining my LTE signal and nicely put it on my Wi-Fi. And then when I check into a hotel, I want to have my stuff queued up waiting for me where I left off before I checked in. And when I check out, it pulls down my profile and deletes all my cookies and all of that other stuff. That seamlessness, which I've been wanting for 20 years now.
Yeah,
like,
right.
where is that? Like,
And that
that's the one
extends
thing.
to IoT, it
That's
extends
yeah,
to-
that's
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
magic that I think would really blow people away if that could happen across all their devices and all their media, and you just felt it was with you all the time, and whatever screen was the best one for that moment, it would automatically pick up and start running on that screen.
Yep.
Yep.
Just to go back to your point, that if you look at the social experience, right, the social experience with virtual reality can change. There is a company called Starship which has a really wonderful social thing called V-Time. right? And the moment it's 4 people get together, you can chat, excuse me, or else you can also put up a viewing screen in it. So I think it may shift the social aspects of viewing content to breaking down, not having to have you in the same place. And clearly having everybody in the same place is going to really still be great. But I think we may see people sharing, watching content, but not doing it in the same place. And Facebook's doing something similar with Oculus.
Yeah.
Just want to open it up for questions. We got about a minute left. Anyone have any questions in the audience? It's good. I mean,
Very quick questions.
yeah. Yes, ma'am. In the blue.
Virtual
One issue
questions.
I had like watching Narcos was that so much of it was in Spanish, so a lot of it was subtitled. And what bugged me was not the subtitling, but the fact that I couldn't multitask while I was watching it. I had to read the dang subtitles. And I'm thinking, especially with
And you were driving.
That's right. In LA traffic.
Autopiloted test.
about VR in the home, and like you said, it's a very solo experience, but I think 90% of the video I consume is consumed while doing something else. That there might be once a week, I might be willing to the patience to sit there for an hour and watch something amazing on VR, but if I can't check my email, if I can't go to the kitchen, if I can't do, I mean, that would make me bananas.
Well, that's sort of the 3D problem. Putting on the glasses, you get dizzy, you want to pause it and leave the room. Do all your friends have glasses? You want to watch the game. That's why I'm sort of, like I said, I'm kind of long on AR, short on
So
VR.
that 3D kind of, either wear the glasses or sit in one place. I don't want to sit in one place,
Yep.
and I don't want to wear the glasses.
Yep.
And that's why we're all on the OTT panel and not the VR.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
That's
well
down the
played.
hall.
Well done.
Well done.
Anyways, I want to thank my panelists. They're going to be available in the hallway for further questions. So again, thank you, Spencer Stevens, Bernie Laramie, Joseph Hopkins, Evan Greenberg, Will Marks, Erik Rosenberg, and Ian Greenblatt. Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you.